Oh,
Oh, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Heavy Metallurgy Album Club. I am King of Cheese Mountain. I'm Marty. It's good to see you. Hope you're all doing well. I'm joined by three other fine fellows here. See what they've been up to. Logan, how you doing?
Hello, I guess I'm the pawn of Cheese Mountain over here. I'm doing pretty good, just toiling away in my sty. But had a great Saturday stream with the Sabbatherium Hour with Rick. Shout out to Rick and Marty. Thank you for letting us pop in there for a quick,
Hell yeah.
a 1.5 episode, show what's spinning and stuff, and
Yeah.
that let me get all of my stoner and sludge energy out on Saturday. So kind of like this week, it's been mainly focusing on more power related things. So been trying to do the homework. But also on Saturday night, there was a brief, only a 4-hour stream meeting of the Satyr Slay crew, and we got to talking about all things German metal, and that kind of started off my week. Except came up. I mean, come on, one of the potentially the second biggest German metal band outside of Scorpions, right? Like, you could maybe make an argument for these days Halloween is, eclipse them potentially, but I don't know. I remember growing up and watching like the music video to Balls to the Wall and stuff on like VH1, MTV, stuff like that. So this is the only full length I own by them. So that's partially why I was spinning this and spinning the rest, because I'm about to rectify that. Of course, Restless and Wild, I think, will be the next move. And then, Marty, you will be happy, but I woke up on Monday morning with track, I think it was track 2, Nevermore, stuck in my head. Just randomly, Rage has been stuck in my head all week. Like, I've woken up basically every morning with a different song from this album, The Missing Link.
Great.
Just playing. Because it's really grown on me a lot. This is kind of still a relatively new addition. Like, it's been with me for only maybe 5 to 6 months now.
Yeah.
But every time I pick it up and re-listen to it, I like it a bit more. And I've spun it like 3 or 4 times this week, and it's grown a lot on me. Like, these songs are simplistic but strong. They're just well written. The choruses are great, and honestly, the vocal performance is really memorable and kind of unique to it, I think. So Rage is it's growing on me. And then, God, trying to get into a power metal mood today. I grabbed the one and only Symphonic power metal album I have in my collection. Surprise, I do have one. It's kind of, I guess it's a deep cut. I don't know. Eden Bridge, if you know of these guys.
Heard of them, I guess. Yeah.
Austria. Look, we got the full female singer treatment. They're proud of her, I think. Good for her. But it's not quite as intense as Rhapsody of Fire, what we're about to dive into. But it's still good. It's a little more prog leaning at times, and I think I kind of do like it for that. But then it dives into like these ABBA and these Queen like tracks too, and they're good, but I'm definitely left feeling like it's not my thing. But
Yeah.
I still think it's important to have an album or two in your collection that really is kind of out there, so you can grab for situations like this. Just to throw it in the CD player, see what happens.
All right. And we got a stranger to these parts here. Jim, welcome back. Worldly Traveler. How you doing, man?
good. It's good to be back. Toronto and the surrounding area was a lot of fun. It's beautiful up there, and a lot of good food, a lot of good music, and so I went to several record stores. I believe it was Raccoon and the Discord that gave me the ones to check out, like Emissions and I forgot some of the names, but the one I liked the best was called Futhark Records, which is the name of the runic alphabet, if you know. And so it's owned by a guy, and he's German. He lives in Toronto now, but he was born and raised there. Really nice gentleman. He owns his own label as well. It's Futhark Records, and so basically everything he has in his shop, it's only underground metal. It's only underground death metal specifically, and some black metal and thrash and doom. That's it, which is great. So had a great conversation with him. He's about my age. I was actually in Germany about the same time he was growing up, which was cool. Like we realized we were about an hour away from each other. He was in Karlsruhe and I was in Pirmasens. So we just had a great time getting caught up. So shout out to Klaus with a C. He made sure to point that out. It's with a C. I'm like, okay. So shout out to Klaus from Futhark Records. So let's talk about his stuff. This is Putrid. This is a Romanian death metal band here that he put out on his label. All mid-tempo, knuckle dragging, cave dwelling death metal. It's disgusting sounding, awesome, just killer bass sound, everything just super low and dirty. Never gets fast. I love that. I love the choice. There's no blast beats on this. It's just slow all the way through,
sludge and chuggy,
just dark and evil and just fun, but just stays there and that low speed. And so very cool, very doomy stuff. Highly recommend Putrid with an E from Romania on Futhark Records. So yeah, check them out. And also you should check out Futhark Records online as well. So he his distro, he has some stuff online. He prefers people come to the shop though, so most of the stuff is only at the shop. So you should go to Toronto and check him out. So another record I got from there is Copperlith. These guys are from Toronto. Kind of hard to see the cover here. Maybe I should take it out of it. Actually, a really cool cover. Yeah, these guys are awesome. So, the Hometown Crew, they are actually on Misako Ojo Records. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. But yeah, I think we all know that label. They put out tons of good stuff. And I know what's that other, is it Extremely Rotten they work with? Anyway, yeah, so this is great stuff. Just, more tempo variations in this, also disgusting and dirty and really cool. I've only got to spin this a couple times so far, but really like this. Also, if you don't know, Copperlith is like the scientific name for fossilized feces, which, I mean, come on, it's more death metal than that, right? I think that's pretty sweet. And let's see what else we got here that I picked up from there. Let's see, we're going to go with, this was a record that was on my radar in late 2025, and I just never got around to picking up. This is Degraved on Dark Descent. These guys are from Seattle. I see Kellen shaking his head. Yeah, this is really killer death metal. Has some cool, like, eerie sounds, good bass tone, great vocal. I think that some again, I've only listened to this one a couple of times all the way through so far, but some eerie synths here and there. So yeah, if you haven't heard Degraved, Dark Descent, good stuff there. So also wanted to call out, where did it go? Oh, there it is. While I was in the shop, like flipping through Klaus's stash, he was playing some death metal over the loudspeaker, and I was just like, man, this is really just great death doom. And he showed me, he'd just ordered this from Bandcamp. This is a band called Umbral Veil. I forget where they're from, but the name of the album is Dwell. Like, killer cover here, just pure death metal. Yep. But yeah, man, this really caught my eye. Just like awesome death doom. And I was like, man, and I didn't know at the time that he had just ordered it himself. I was like, oh, dude, you got any of this stuff? Whatever, let's do this. Great. He goes, well, that's my copy. I just ordered it. And then he like felt bad. Like 10 minutes later, he's like, dude, I'll sell you my copy, man. So
good record shop owner. Everything's for sale.
Yeah. And he also hooked me up with a Anthemic cassette as well, which was awesome black and death metal stuff, which I didn't like their first album, but I liked the one that he played me, and that was really good stuff. So really a great experience, man. Great pricing, a very cool guy. Check him out, Futhark Records on Instagram and in Toronto and stuff like that. Definitely support this guy, man. He He's all about the underground. All the labels he pulls in are only underground death metal, and like I said, to a lesser extent, black and doom. But cool guy, great selection, and we got to help the record stores like this stay alive. So if you're in the area, check them out.
All right, good to see you, Kellen. Good to see you. How you doing?
Doing well. It's been a pretty busy week for me. I essentially get ready to take possession of a new home on Friday, and then right after I do that, I get ready to leave on vacation for West Virginia. So I'm gonna move into a new home and then take out on vacation. So it's been pretty wild for me. For anyone who's kind of tuned into the show in recent weeks, I am really separated from the majority of my collection. So I don't have anything new to show off over the past couple weeks. I guess the couple things that I will highlight is my personal favorite sort of younger thrash band, Critical Defiance, has a new record coming out this fall. I saw that come up on Dying Victims. So I've been listening to the single they've released from that record. And my death metal shout out is going to be a band called Rotten Tomb on Nuclear Winter Records. I think that's the dudes from Dead Congregation, their label, but they've got a new one out this year that I've been enjoying tons. So I don't have anything new to sort of show off and talk about, whatever show and tell moment, but stuff I've been listening to this past week.
All right. Well, as far as I go, we're doing a What's Spinning on Friday, so I'm going to hold a few of my pulls for that because I don't want to double dip, and I haven't been listening to a ton of stuff. So, yep, we're going to do that. So we're just going to skip that part and go to this Rhapsody of Fire. We're going to be talking about the Frozen Tears of Angels, and for those unfamiliar with Rhapsody of Fire, Rhapsody of Fire, formerly known as Rhapsody, is an Italian symphonic power metal band formed in Trieste by guitarist Luca Turilli and keyboardist Alex Starpoli. The band is widely considered a pioneer of the symphonic power metal subgenre. Originally formed in '93 as Thundercross, the band released albums under the moniker Rhapsody before changing their name to Rhapsody of Fire in 2006 due to trademark issues. The band is known for their fantasy concept albums for both the Emerald Sword Saga and the Dark Secret Saga. And this is their 8th full-length album that we're talking about tonight. And Kellen picked it, which I think people are all very surprised about. But yeah, we're going to, our friendly power metal correspondent, Logan, what are your thoughts on this one?
Let me put away my broadsword real quick and down my mead. The dreaded power metal pick, and from Kellen, this is a tout brute kind of moment, isn't it? But I incorrectly thought that I was kind of familiar with this album before, and that like my brother owned a copy, and that we had spun it once or twice. But after confirming, I was a no. So this is my first week, I guess, really checking out this album and potentially Rhapsody of Fire at all, maybe. I'm sure I've heard a song here or there, but yeah, still upon hitting play, I kind of had an idea what we were going to get into, very over the top, very technical, classical leaning, symphonic arrangements wrapped around blistering power metal, wrapped around a dragon style narration. And of course, that is basically what this is. And I was not disappointed to hear Saruman himself introduce the album. I actually did not realize that they had a full career with Christopher Lee. That's pretty fucking cool. So automatically bonus points there for that. And I gotta say, kind of just walking you guys through my first to full listen, the first 3 songs, I was kind of all on board, man. I was this is pretty good. We're the first track, solid opener, and then we get into I want to say Sunlight Moonlight, but I know it's something else and not that. Track 2, very catchy. Love the arrangements, and it was immediately an impressively written song. And then we get to track 3, Reign of Terror, and this thrashy, aggressive song just comes out of nowhere and grabs me, and I was immediately whoa, where is this coming from? We get the snarling, almost black metal vocals. There's all these townspeople that are in a panic, and I'm visualizing, smog soaring over the town, and it's cool. It's like I feel like this is what this album is meant to do. And then we get to the next song, and I'm trapped in a Ren Fair I can't get out of, and it's immediately derails my whole experience.
Agreed.
And that kind of is how the album went for the rest of my spin. Like we get, of course, there's the ballad, and the ballad was a similar thing. It felt like I hit a wall, and I very vivid memory of the first spin because I was just out walking. I get to thinking, man, this album, we're wrapping up, right? This is it. I checked the track listing, and we just started. I guess it was the final track, but it was 12 minutes long, and I was immediately like, oh, no. I had met my quota, and like it was a blur at that point. So I really only remember the first 3 songs in that first spin, and I definitely realized that I was conflicted. For sure. Like I knew there was going to end up being parts of this that I don't think I was going to click with, but parts of it that at the same time I knew I was already clicking with. So I can already see Kellen's disappointed up there. But yeah, so there's still some power metal tropes and stereotypes that I am struggling with, and listening to this album immediately brought them out with me. So I was curious what the week would hold.
All right. Nothing says welcome back, Jim. We missed you like some symphonic power metal. So how are you doing with this?
I gotta say, it's, getting to the end of that episode to see what Kellen picked. Man, the last thing I could have ever thought Kellen was going to pull was an Italian symphonic power metal band. I was like, what did somebody just clone him and body snatch our buddy or what happened there? I was like,
took out a chunk of his brain.
This is very, very strange what's happening here. I'm like, do you actually own this, Kellen, or did you steal that from somebody? Or but anyway, very similar to Logan, right? I spun it up, heard Christopher Lee. I'm like, all right, this is good. Like, yeah, Sour Man, come on, dude. This is cool. I had remembered that he had done something with a power metal band years ago, but I'd forgotten all about it, who he was or what he was doing.
He even had his own band. He did an album.
I remember when that came out. I checked it out and everything.
Charlemagne, right? Yeah.
Yep, Charlemagne. Yeah. So I was like, hey, cool points right away. And yeah, man, Sea of Fate is a crusher. I love the guitar work that opens it up with that hammer-on riff. And I was like, okay, cool. This is going to be good, right? And the vocals kind of remind me of a little bit of a like Jeff Tate with more wizardy, but with like less power. Like a really good vocalist in that realm, and it's actually like a compliment. And if I put you in the same realm of Jeff Tate, to me that's high praise, because I love Queensryche from Empire back. So but anyway, yeah, Crystal Moonlight, another great song, and so yeah, much like Logan was going good, and then yeah, the goofy happy medieval bop of Danza di Fuoco e Giaco, and yeah, if I butchered it, I'm sorry. Whatever. Sorry to anybody who speaks that language, but yeah, that was I kind of knew it was coming. I knew the Ren Fair was on its way, and
you smell the turkey legs being pupated on by flies in the distance. Yes,
I did, and I was just like, okay, and it basically and it became the skipper every time it swung back around, right? I couldn't even make it through it. The ballad was rough too, but that one I didn't have to skip that one so much. But yeah, the Ren thing was rough. But overall though, I'm surprised to tell you guys that I actually had fun with this. It was way more fun than I thought it was going to be. I was actually jamming on this tonight in the truck with my wife, and we were both kind of grooving to it. And usually, like I've mentioned before in the show, like my wife hates operatic vocals.
Wow.
Death metal, black metal, she doesn't phase her, but operatic, she's like, nope. But she was digging it, man. And we were having fun listening to it together, and that was really cool. Not not that has any bearing on my opinion, but I'm just mentioning it as it was like that. That's how fun this record is. You know what I mean? Is it even like wormed its way past, the operatic disdain that my wife has, and we were all enjoying it. So yeah, that's my takeaway. My first impression is that this is a fun record.
Yeah, for me, I own this record, obviously, and I've got it cheap somewhere. And I've got a lot of Rhapsody of Fire and Rhapsody. I don't have all of them, but I might have all of them. I don't know. There's a lot. And I got this, listened to it a couple times. Like, yeah, it's good. I like it. And that's kind of as far as it went. So total immersion into it this week. This is very much for me one of those albums you listen to really enjoy performances. I think their singer Fabio Leone, or Leone, however you say his last name, there is a sincerity to his voice. It's very much opera. I mean, it sounds like metal that was made for the opera. It feels mature. There's a level of cheese here, which they do, as the track has already been lambasted. It's track 5, Danza di Fuoco, whatever. They completely turbo the intensity that this album builds. But you listen to this, first of all, the keyboards. We'll talk about that later. I want to get into that later. It's very much a musician's album, and yeah, there's some cheese. If you have to, resign yourself to, I got to get through this cheese aspect. To me, this doesn't feel like cut of the mill power metal cheese. This feels like actual skilled, trained musicians that are making more mature, classically trained, neoclassically trained metal. But they don't, the classical influences and the operatic influences they're using, it feels like comes from a place of true love, not just, we're just going to, slap on these frilly shirts and slay the dragon with our rubber swords type shit. There feels like, you're actually, this would be an event I would pay to go see and have to dress up with a nice shirt. You know what I'm saying? Just Fabio's vocals on this thing are just he's got such a rich vibrato. A very severe vibrato. It's very wavery, but if you put it into the context of operatic music, it's perfect. If it's perfect. And there are times where the music is very advanced and very technical. Reminds me of older Coroner, like Skeleton on Your Shoulder type riff work. It's like, it feels like a Coroner song, but with more flash to it. And yeah, the more I listened to this thing and just really couldn't wait to hear how everything sat together, the vocals, how they interacted with the synth lines, or how the trade-off between the guitars and the keyboards in the solos. I think it's a very rich, mature record that keeps giving the more you listen. And yeah, this was kind of just a hole filler in my collection that I got for cheap. And I'm like thinking, damn it, how many more Rhapsody of Fire albums that I have I not really spent the time with to get to the point that I feel like I got with this one, which I guess is probably sharing too much at this point in the game, but yeah, pretty impressed with this one. Kellen.
Yeah, so when I started to venture into this world, I don't know if it was, I think it might have actually been Ben had turned me on to, back when they were Rhapsody, Symphony of Enchanted Lands. Mm-hmm. And said that was kind of my introduction to this band. So I think that's their second full length, early on their catalog. And I kind of was like, okay, I have a classic record from this sort of world of power metal. I'll throw it into the mix, and every once in a while I'd pull it out and enjoy it. And this is kind of like, and I don't know, I'm not the most versed person in this world, but a formative band if you're trying to get into symphonic power metal. So I was like, all right, I will add another one to the collection. I'll go back to this well and see what it kind of has to offer. And this one I saw like it got a lot of sort of praise much later in the band's life. They had changed names. The band members had kind of circulated through the years. I think the sort of formative trio between keyboardist, vocalist, and guitarist are still intact for this record. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, the bass of this still feels like super fast. You can hear where at one point in time they were sort of inspired by like what was happening in Germany, but man, the like Bach to Beethoven to our sweeping arpeggio and like Malmsteen is just all over this.
Yeah.
The solo style for Luca, who's the guitarist here, is so deeply entrenched. And we'll get into the keyboards later on as well. And you kind of talked about the operatic aspect of the vocals, but for me, just Luca's guitar playing is such a specific call out to a particular time period in classical sort of history. And once I kind of got past that, I think tried to dig into this record in terms of like the songwriting and other symphonic aspects to it. So it's like a new sort of world for me to venture into. But I feel like if you're trying to become familiar with this stuff, this is an important band. So just a place for me to start and kind of enjoy. Like I've mentioned, this is kind of newer for me as well. So I'm not coming into this album with like tons of history or a emotional connection to the first time I heard it back in the day or anything like that. This is a new thing for me. To somewhat of like Logan's point, it is for me to sit down and like absorb all what I guess this record's really 59 tracks, 55 minutes. It's not necessarily like the easiest undertaking, but I wouldn't also say that there's tons of filler here necessarily either. Yeah. Because it's a musician's record. It's a heavy record, but just a totally different thing than, let's say, like taking on a Symphony X record. So it's challenging in a different way while still sort of a musician's listen. So that was my sort of initial impression getting into this. And if I'll just sort of segue here into the question for this evening. The scale and virtuosity of classical music has always been an implicit aspect of metal music. There are some bands and genres who stress this element more explicitly, but perhaps none more than symphonic power metal. This wholehearted investment in classical and symphonic aspects, at least initially for me personally, was one of the most polarizing aspects of the genre. Why do you think when something so musically foundational, like classical music, is brought to the fore, it proves to be so challenging to many?
Can I go first? I'm going to go first. I think in regards to metal, it's how they dress it. You put these super talented guys and then they start dressing like they're going to the Ren Fair. I mean, Twilight Force is another prime example. Yeah, they lean into that and they make it a little comical here and there. You could tell they're not completely super serious about it. But, it isn't enough that a band is classically trained and super talented and writes really dense and amazing songs. They have to dress it up like something to appeal to a wider audience, to get people to pay attention to them, whether that's positive or negative reactions. Where we live in the click era where you have to have something, a mask or, some sort of a dog and pony show to get your music to be paid attention to. I think that's a big part of it. And, Lee's been struggling that he does Warhammer 666, cheers to you, Lee. He does the pre-show, the pre-game to this. And he's trying to, cause I've talked to him. He loves power metal or glam metal. He loves it. And I'm like, you love sleazebees, but dislike power metal. Make that make sense because, it's a different kind of cheese. Power metal is more aggressive. And I think he's still trying to figure that out as well. But, why do you think something so musically foundational is brought to the fore? Yeah, I would say just the way it's dressed up. They put a cape on the people and do this and that. And I think that, from an underground metal perspective, if you're coming from the underground, you might like straight up heavy metal, leather and chains and bullet belts, but you start making it more flamboyant, then you suddenly it kind of turns your heathen guts a little bit. I've struggled with this. I've struggled with this over the years too, until I realized that you start breaking it down. The musicianship is, you can't sit here and bag on the musicianship. You cannot bag on the talent of the singer. The songs are all meticulously constructed, and all the parts going into it are years and years of running scales over and over and over in your room practicing. So you have to have the reside in your, how much cheese can I take? And if I can strip that away, can I take it for what it is? And I finally came around to the point where, yes, I can take it. And once I let go of that one little hang up, it feels like a whole genre of music that I've been, keeping at hand's length is suddenly there and, available for the taking. And another part of it is it's usually wrapped in a lot of, the melody and, a lot of positivity and in key type of stuff. Whereas underground metal is often, minor instead of major. So it's darker, sadder, more, evil sounding. And this is cast all that away to embrace the happiness. So, if you're force feeding yourself for decades the negativity, the positivity that comes out of stuff like this can also be a turnoff again, until you come to that realization that I need to look at it for what it is and not how I think I perceive, how I feel like I look listening to it. Like, oh, they're going to think I'm stupid listening to this music. I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's just kind of how I see it from where you were going with the question. How about you, Logan?
It's a cool question, and kind of dug up some age-old memories I have of classical. Like, it's cool that you phrased it around classical specifically, because it might be cluing me in on some issues that I have with like this style overall. Like, so first off, speaking only wholly for myself and personal experience.
You only like the classical demos, is what you're saying?
I only like
and the first classical album,
the original stuff that Beethoven wrote down before he played it to anybody, and then the
sorry,
stuff that he burnt,
I had to get that in there.
Yeah. It's all good. No. So my connotation, and just whenever I think of classical music or even hear something that reminds me of classical music, it brings up very core memories from childhood. Classical music was always something my mom was always pushing on us as we were growing up to, this is what you should listen to. You should check out. Let's just listen to Mozart. Let's just do homework and listen to Mozart. That's great. Let's do this and listen to Beethoven. And then there was a brief stint where I was trying to learn the piano, and I, of course, failed. And classical music was indeed like one of the starting points. Of course, there was, the wheels on the bus, but then there was a little bit of trying to learn Mozart as well. And like, I somewhat associate classical music with like, feeling in over my head and feeling unmusical and not getting it, and feeling like music and playing music was just not my bag and not something I could do. And like the more I grew up, the more that context of like not necessarily disliking classical music, but just not feeling like it was ever my music or anything I would appreciate or want to listen to. And getting into metal was kind of breaking away from all the stuff that I thought of when I thought of classical music and its ilk, which was boredom, structure, discipline, being rigid. Like, this is all stuff that metal intentionally tries to subvert for the most part. I mean, and yeah, it was a little bit of a rebellion. And I think whenever it pops up, it's just not something I would rather listen to, like something that is trying to be like classically inspired and stuff. And then focusing on maybe metal as a whole, I do think there is like, we as a metal community idolize just a group of young kids or dudes just getting together, drinking a couple beers and kind of throwing passion and, combining, just playing just individual instruments to kind of create a band and create a sound. And it's not like tied to one guy, typing all this stuff out in the bedroom, which of course contradicts different styles of metal, like, bedroom black metal and technical death metal, which is all about that. But I think at its core, especially in the 80s, it was very much like more of a blue collar thing. And if you think about classical music and anything that was like linked to it, I mean, that's like music school. That's like music lessons. That's, you're classically trained. You're not someone who's just picking up a guitar in his bedroom and, figuring out on his own and then going to band practice in some dude's garage every, other day. So I always feel like it's a bit antithetical to what metal initially was trying to be. And I guess to a certain extent, I feel like I still hold on to that idea. Like I do like certain classically inspired, like, technical death metal bands and progressive metal bands. But when it comes to that kind of style, I don't feel like you need to get an emotional output from it, right? Like it's okay that Necrophagist is playing cold and clinical, neoclassical style guitar work, because they're not trying to give you an emotional impact. But with power metal, I think that's important, and I guess I'm still in the area where I'm looking for more of a rough and rugged American blue collar, kind of style, or where it doesn't feel like I'm trapped in an opera classical concert. And this album still kind of gave that to me. And I think even other bands like Flesh God Apocalypse was never my bag, and I think it's kind of because of that too. Like they wore the suits and had the full piano, and I was just not interested in something like that. So that's always been, whenever they're too overt about being classical, I guess it's always has been a bit of a turnoff for me.
And to follow up on that, knowing you come from a decent sized family and you have a sibling that is very much into power metal, you talk about rebellion, why would I listen? That's my brother's music. I listen to this dark, dirty sludge. I'm different. I'm special. He listens to crap. I listen to the awesome, dirty stuff. I mean, there's that aspect as well. It might be a little more subconscious, but yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And once again, to give credit to him, he figured out the piano, and he loves playing, piano and stuff. So I guess it's different things, and we all approach life differently. And maybe at that, because he's the third in line. I'm the eldest. He's the third in line. So maybe at that point, it hit him just right to where he was okay listening to Mozart.
Right on. All right, Jim, your thoughts?
Similar to Logan's in a way. Like I feel that I guess it depends on where you're brought up, or whatever, but or how you're brought up, or what you're exposed to as youth. But I think at least a lot of folks in my generation, like, okay, classical is like, it's the highest form of music. This is, what, the elites of the world listen to. This is what you should aspire to as a burgeoning musician. This is sort of the bedrock of, everything that's led up to now, which all that's true, right? You know what I mean? For Logan's question, like, yeah, it's foundational. Absolutely it is. And, it's where but the fact that, we hear it everywhere, we're taught about it historically, where we listen to it in music class, we hear it in elevator. Well, we used to hear it in elevators. It's different music now, but, I think that, so it becomes a part, at least for me as a youth, like a part of the machine, right? A part of like the accepted world, right? The world, coming up that was completely out of reach for, at least for me, it was, right? So metal to me, being, aggressive and simple and loud and noisy and angry and all these things was the complete antithesis of that. Mm-hmm. And so I think that might be why there's a visceral reaction to its inclusion. But I think that really kind of was a short-lived feeling of mine, because I came up sort of in the shred era, right? The Shrapnel Records stuff, and my buddy down the street, who I played in a band with, who was an extremely talented guitar player, and he actually got to the point where he could pull all that stuff off. He was an amazing musician. I was never that. I was like, I'll ride the root nuts on the bass, man. You know what I mean? Don't expect me to do any arpeggios or fast scales.
Yeah.
we were very different. But my approach was, I was very much a thrash kid. I just wanted to bang my head, get loud, and have fun, and cause a mosh pit. I mean, like, that's, I wasn't interested in, learning about, you know, where all this stuff originated and how to, turn that into my own playing. But I respected and even liked things like, Yngwie and stuff like that. I wasn't so much into all the shrapnel bands. Most of them were kind of annoying to me, but there were a few here and there, like the Jason Becker stuff was good. And I'm trying to think of another one right now, but it's escaping me. But Yngwie
Tony
was,
McAlpine was on
yeah.
Shrapnel. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there was, and of course that my buddy was always listening to that stuff, right? You know what I mean? So quickly, like, that form of metal that embraced it, that neoclassical shredding style, all that kind of stuff, like, became sort of my gateway into really kind of accepting. Now, I wouldn't say accepting, but like being okay with like classical metal or classical music rather. And I even at one point bought like like, you know, classical music that inspired metal CD, and it was all this stuff like, Wagner and things like that. You know what I mean? So I got to hear some stuff, and that was a kind of a great little journey for me to see what the connections were. Right. But I do think that maybe, that initial, reluctance to sort of embrace that. And I think Logan just confirmed it. Really. It's even there still today, depending on how you're coming up, like, that's, for the other side, right? You know what I mean? And I know not every metal fan's story is the same, but certainly mine was, coming from a place of like, very poor, you know what I mean? Not a lot of access to a lot of things, certainly not things that are high level, which I've been fortunate enough to, now I've been to like a play and things like that. You grow up, your opportunities change, so, but I can see that, like, I'm sure there's a lot of metal fans that still feel like that. That's, for those that are already up there, having champagne and, paying several $100s to go to some show or whatever. But as you get older and your opportunities change, like even going to college and seeing like a classical guitar player playing on nylon strings by himself in a venue, and no amplification, but it was still ringing out because of just the way the place was designed, and it was so amazing. And watching him pulling off all this stuff from Paganini and stuff like that, that changed, my opinion of that, and I really enjoyed those moments. So I think it can start that way, but I think it starts to evolve. Now, for me, in a modern sense, listening to like symphonic stuff, it's just it takes there. You got so much space, right? When you're making a recording, right? You don't have an infinite amount of room, to fill with all kinds of sounds that you want. It's finite. And so the more symphonic a band can be, right, the less space there is for the metal instrumentation. And some bands do it so much where the guitars and bass and drums are like literally hard to hear, right? Or maybe they don't do it on every song, but they'll do it on some. And that's when it kind of annoys me. When I go to metal, I want to hear metal, right? And if there's a balance, I can kind of take it. But for me, when the symphonic is the overarching, sonic experience, then I'm not so into it, and I tend to just kind of tune out. So it depends on what I'm going for at the moment. Like, what is it that I'm wanting to hear? But typically when I want to hear metal, I want to hear that metal instrumentation take up the most of the mix, right? So that's kind of where I am from a modern sense, right? When I'm talking about my taste and stuff like that. But certainly, as I've gotten older, I'm okay with just having fun with stuff like that. Even though some of these like major chord, classical elements that can be very, cheesy, quote unquote. The reality is they're also extremely difficult to play well. And you can kind of embrace that and respect it for what it is, even if it's not your bag, right? And you can still just kind of have fun in a major chord-y kind of way. You know, we love living in the dark here in the extreme metal scene, and you know, but you know, it's okay to come up to the light, man. You know, I like a little bit of sun. You know what I mean, every once in a while. So that's my take.
All right, Kellen.
Yeah, I just think this has been kind of on my mind because I've been listening, like in terms of my classical choices. I do listen to that kind of music on a consistent basis, and there's like an entire like post World War II, the kind of classical or orchestral music that was being composed is just a world apart from this kind of stuff. And I think one of the reasons I had such a difficult time with the sort of the shrapnel, like Malmsteen, major key arpeggio sort of solo is it just, to me, it sounded like metal that was looking for approval. I guess that was the way I would phrase it. It was like, it's going to be incredible musicianship from a particular era of or time period within classical music. You're looking at essentially like the 18th, 19th century, which is everything that you're referencing here in terms of like what the Academy or what your parents wanted you to listen to. But if you put on like a lot of the sort of more modern, I mean, specifically like post World War II, beginning of the 20th century stuff, it is not easy listening. And that shit turns me on as a metal listener. Like, it is not casual. It is not major key. It is not easy. There's a lot of like very like challenging sort of chord choices and harmonies that does not make for easy listening. And as a metalhead, like I gravitate towards that. And part of my sort of disdain initially towards power metal was not just like the class distinction. Like, this is what wealthy, affluent, sort of privileged people learn how to play and are praised for, right? Like, I think that's as metalheads, we sort of initially hear that. But it was also like a particular time period within classical music that I think is accepted or is sort of universally known. And so it felt like metal that was geared towards that. So I just, that was probably the biggest challenge outside of all, to Marty's point of like dressing it, right? So however they're going to look, probably in some way mirrors, if they are not wearing cardboard outfits, whatever, like maybe they're going to be dressed in something that would resemble a virtuoso from the Romantic era of the 19th century, and they'll lean into that. And I get that that's part of like the Ren Fair sort of culture reference that they're doing here, right? So there's a package. The themes are all fantasy, which are like medieval. So I get like there's a collective sort of vision for this. But musically, those chord choices, the kind of solos that Luke is playing here, which are super wild, just crazy fast, brilliantly executed kind of solo stuff, all of it sounds very much to, it could be part of a shrapnel listen, right? It could sound like something that you would hear Paganini play, right? Yeah. And that's something, says an artist that is referenced, hundreds of years ago. And I think that's kind of like the challenge I had with this, is it just that point of like, okay, we're going to play music that the sort of the Academy or the ivory towers will accept. And when I was first getting into this music, I was like, I'm running from that. That is not what I want.
Yeah.
There are absolutely, metal musicians who are playing in the extreme styles that I guess all of us would listen to on a more consistent basis, who I guarantee you sit down, like, can talk about that music confidently. But I think, so I've always resisted, like, I bristle when someone says, this is thinking man's metal. I'm like, you are disqualified. I don't want to listen to what you have to say. Because I don't think you're giving a fair description of what do you consider non-thinking man's metal? Like, you don't know what you're talking about. That's like the immediate reaction I have when I hear something like that. So I think there's plenty of extreme artists who we don't necessarily associate with classical music who are probably very well versed or competent musicians in a classical sense. But we just aren't able to register it in the same way because it doesn't sound like Bach or it doesn't sound like Beethoven. And so I think that's because a band like Rhapsody of Fire so blatantly does. I immediately sort of like turned away for the longest time. And it was difficult for me to sort of embrace the melodrama that was going on here. So that's just kind of my take on that.
And to take it one little step further, the fact that, I don't know how big this band is. I mean, obviously this is on Nuclear Blast, which is a bigger label, always has been. A band, you listen to the musicianship and the performance and the production, it's obviously a group of musicians that aspire for something bigger. And then to see them do a tour through the U.S. playing these little tiny, shitty little clubs, you want to talk about how metalheads perceive it. That is fish out of water type of venue for something. This should at least be a theater type of band going through the U.S. playing in actual stages that maybe plays have been on, and just seeing it in a shitty club with bad PA and, it just seems, might turn people off. It just seems like they're bigger than where they're playing at the time, but doing it still for the love of metal. I don't know where I'm going with this other than it just popped into my head. Yeah, let's discuss the musicality and composition of The Frozen Tears of Angels. Logan, we'll start with you.
Sweet. Let's see. Definitely an adjustment getting used to just the excessive over-the-top layering that's on display on every single track of these compositions. I mean, it's definitely similar to digesting indeed like a technical death metal or like a progressive death metal band or like something avant-garde where there's so many different things going on all the time, constantly. Like I will say, I want to say it was never a dull listen, though I did drift off. I do drift off every time I spin this. But at the same time, you get started and you're like, there's always something going on.
You're not used to being challenged by so many riffs all in one song.
No,
one or two max.
Marty, it's not the riffs, dude. Yeah, well, also that. It's not the riffs, though. Look, there's like fucking 17 different things going on here. We've got the riffs, we've got choirs, we've got operas, symphonic arrangements, guitars, a whole township of people that pops up. Saruman narrating, Saruman's daughter narrating. They're all here doing just shit at random all the time, and it's a lot sometimes, guys. So I was trying to unpack all this, and I think I got tired from at a certain point of writing this section. So I was just like, it's a lot. But listen, I'm extremely impressed with the amount of musicianship of every single performer on here. There are 17 session musicians a part of this album, according to the Metal Archives. But a lot of that's choir folks.
Yeah.
But like the orchestral arrangements, honestly, they were cooler and meshed with the songs better than I initially expected. Yes, my blood pressure is dropping. I need a White Castle stat. They did a good job of, I think, encompassing what the song wanted to do and not being so over the top. I got a highlight was, I keep calling the track Sunlight Moonlight. I know that's not the name of the song. It's Crystal Moonlight, isn't it?
Yeah.
Track 3.
I think that's the most straight up power metal song on the album, really.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah. And that's one where I was like, man, the arrangements of the orchestral elements I think are done perfectly well. And for the most part, they stay in that lane and they don't really overshadow everything and really take away. I still wish the guitar was shining the whole time, but I get that it's not going to be like that in this kind of album, so that's fine. But on that Crystal Moonlight song, I thought it was cool how the symphonic elements would make the guitar and everything sound heavier when they were like all together, and that was fun to watch them weave that track together. And a lot of other tracks do that too. And then big highlight to the guitar. Whenever that thing came in, like loud and proud, someone strutting in, playing those keys. I was impressed and I was hooked, man. Like because it happens on track 2, Sea of Fate. Like kind of towards the end. That's your first introduction, and yeah, I like that guitar, man. Whenever it pops up, that was a highlight for me. For vocals, Fabio's good. He never really connected with me, though. I hate to say it. Like he's definitely very talented.
Mm-hmm.
He just felt like another power metal vocalist that I've heard that never, like, going back to a previous one we discussed, Hibria, Defying the Rules. The vocals of that guy, pretty honestly, even like Jorn Landa on Master Plan, I thought was a more like, I guess maybe I like the lower range vocal performances, and his being more that higher operatic style just never didn't land like kind of what I was looking for. But on certain songs, it definitely fit, like that Reign of Terror track and other songs. Of course, the guitar work is next level and the absolute highlight of the album. It's dizzying, it's intricate, powerful, and goes from being like thrash to having that neoclassical side of things. I mean, it's impressive to behold for sure, and I want to be following that the whole time, but it's tough. And at a certain point, I kind of just get tired of trying to focus on everything, and it's around like track around the ballad and after the ballad, it kind of all becomes a power metal blur and mush for me. And a lot of the compositions end up kind of glossing over. Like there's sections where there's like they're just doing so much and it's so impressive, and I cannot describe all the stuff they're doing. Like there's a literally an opera singer that pops in, I think on the track on the way to Einor, and it's kind of cool, but I don't know why she's here or what's going on or where I am, and what year is it? And then
save me, Matt Pike, help me, dope smoker.
And then the Frozen Tears of Angels, the title track is so long, like though it starts so strong and has such a cool like triumphant guitar at the beginning, and I'm kind of lost after that. And that ends up happening compositionally to me for after basically Reign of Terror, and especially after the ballad. So I think to me that this is me saying it's a me problem, and even the 7 to 8 listens I gave it this week wasn't necessarily enough to kind of crack the full compositional code. So I'm going to hand it over to someone who's a lot more capable of doing that, potentially.
Jim.
So yeah, obviously, as we already discussed, ad nauseum, to play this style of music, and to play it, convincingly, you got to be incredibly talented, and compositionally, I don't know these guys' story, right? I did zero research on them as individuals, so I hope they wrote all the symphonic elements. I don't know that if they did. If they did, kudos to them.
They did. There's no other composers or instruments really listed on here other than a flute. And,
cool. Well, if that's the case, then obviously they're bringing it for real, right? But that piece of it really is less interesting to me than surprise, the more metallic instrumentation and how that's done, and it's done effectively for me. I love that they do a lot of like this hammer on pull off kind of thing as part of their riffs and stuff, besides just the shredding. And I love that sound. I like when bands do that, and I kind of like that. It's kind of like, at least on this record of theirs, it's kind of like a focal point for their rhythms. They do a lot of that on this album, and tons of like bass breaks with like the bass player doing finger tapping and stuff like that, and so all of that really helps pique my interest in the songs, and kind of keeps it going for me, but also the catchy choruses as well. I mean, it can be argued that that one of the things that's hard for a person with more extreme taste won't like is like the more poppy elements, because they're super catchy in the choruses. But But here's where I think the fun is. Like I love the moonlight. You know, I
Oh
love
yeah,
I love that chord. It's so
it's great.
catchy. You know,
Yeah.
I find myself like walking around the house just going moonlight, just like breaking out into song. You know? I was like that kind of rules. And you know, if it hits me that hard, then that's great, right? And you know, and there's variety here. And just is Fabio also doing those screams and stuff on Reign of Terror? Is
I
that
don't think so.
Oh, really?
I don't
Okay.
know for I don't know for sure,
I wasn't
but
sure either, but whoever's doing it, I thought it was a great contrast
yeah.
there. And even if he's not doing it, regardless, we're talking about musicality and composition, the inclusion of that was a nice surprise, and it gave a little more color
Mhm.
to not only the song, but I think the album as a whole. Just like being open to like pulling that into this really melodic realm and really classical realm. I like the acoustic guitar playing on here. I thought it was you know, very tasteful, very cool sounding. I know Fabio does a lower register vocal on the way to Ainur, and I like how he's showing his range here, right? You know, he doesn't have to just live up here at the top.
Mhm.
He could come down a little, and it has some power, right? So that sort of variety and the vocal was really intriguing to me, and also, you know, the title track, man. You know, a lot of times we say, 11 minutes, right? Yeah, that's an you know a kind of a turn off unless we're talking about you know like you know an instrumental post metal song or something like that. I'm kind of cool with that, or like you know like a Wolves in the Throne Room type of track. But in this, I was surprised, man. That's one of my favorite tracks on the record. I love the build of this song. I love
Mhm.
all the kind of disparate elements to sort of make it up. As a closer, I do think it has this sort of like a climactic feel to it, and I like what he brings in the title of the song, but he kind of adds a couple other words to make it a little more interesting. Like, how does he word it again? The frozen tears of sad immortal angels. You know, just a couple little extra lines like that. Again, you're adding a little more color. You're taking it in a little bit of a different direction than anticipated, right? So, you know, you throw all that into the mix. You know, we know these guys can shred. That's awesome, you know, but that with like kind of the chip tune esque keyboard solos and all, you know, it was a great kind of a bag for me, you know, to kind of hold on to. And it reminded me, and I don't know if any of you guys remember or know about the TurboGrafx 16 back in the late 80s or whatever video game system, but there was a game on there called East, right, with YS, and it was back at the time it was kind of innovative to have a game on CD, right? And it had music like that, just like you know, like a guitar just kind of jamming or whatever. And it immediately brought me back to playing that game all those years ago. I was like, oh man, that's like an East guitar solo. So, you know, kudos to them for like, you know, unknowingly, of course, you know, being able to kind of bring me back into that headspace because that was a really one of my favorite games of all time. Um, but yeah, you know, so it's like again, it's for me, it was all the little things about this, all the nuance here, which is strange to say nuance. We're talking about Italian symphonic power metal, but there is some nuance here in the composition that is actually what kept me like and kind of enjoying the ride here and being okay with coming back to it.
All right, Kellen, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think like looking at the just we talk about composition here, the songs structurally are not that challenging as it may seem. I went into this sort of very looking like I think the second track here. After I would also want to say to hear Christopher Lee on these, it's just like he's got a as a narrator for a power metal record or a metal record in general. Um, and one, he seems like a completely committed to that role, and like he enjoys the shit being asked to do this, and probably loves the content and the world around it. Um, I know it's such a subtle sort of thing, but like,
And he saw the very last guillotine ever performed too when he was a kid. How metal is that?
Dude, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I just as a presence here, I know it's kind of like not the major thing to focus on, but I do like I really enjoyed him. So but I think the second track that we get into, Sea of Fate feels to me like very much introduction here. Like, there's nothing about this song that is overly complex in terms of verse, chorus, solo kind of thing that you're like, all right, kind of straightforward sort of power metal. I think what's really interesting about how they write songs, though, is like, one, I think it's Latin he's singing in, right? I'm just going to throw that out there. I think it's a Latin edition. I don't know if it's Italian. Please, if people in the the distinction or can read that, and but the way they throw the English in and then they'll sort of jump to a Latin verse and alter the instrumentation during the course of it, I think is a really interesting way to play like segment dynamics. Having multiple languages on a listen. I would be attuned to that. There's several times during the course of this, on the title track, but even on the third track here that we've been referencing, Crystal Moonlight, it's like right before they get to the main chorus, they'll include sort of this small little like lead up. It's like a runway before you get to the big jump, and they'll change the language. And they just start, it's like they know we're just playing with that tension a little bit, and then they launch into everybody knows English, we'll all sing along, get to our big chorus moment, right? What's interesting though, like if the different textures or choices in terms of the synth, I mean, Logan says it's a guitar. I have no idea. But
hard to look tough carrying a guitar around. I'm sorry, it just is.
Right. But like, I think it's to me, if Jim mentioned sort of this chiptune thing. I almost hear it as like on some of these, like they'll move from like the big sort of sweeping keys that will build like an orchestral aspect, and then they'll transition into if it's not a piano, which a piano does show up several times on this during the sort of quieter moments, it feels to me almost like a harpsichord sort of tone. So I think that's an interesting sort of like textural change that they make in between different stanzas. Like they'll swap that out for like an organ in some of these tracks. So the keys here are constantly dancing around different sort of like sonic textures and a different template from classical music that I think add variation to this, to Jim's point, in terms of like there's subtleties that make this entertaining and not so boring to listen to. Man, Luca's like the only one who's listed as the guitarist on this. So he must be playing all riffs, all solos,
and counter riffs. There's sometimes there's like riffs, super technical, and then another super technical going at the same time, just a little bit off. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's like, so you'll have like a solo, and he's got these like sort of blistering sort of arpeggiated sweeps happening, and then there's a melody that he's playing underneath that's sort of adding to this section. So that is clearly like pulling from a very specific time period in like whatever 19th century classical music. It's like a central theme that defined the era. So you can tell how well like trained he is in that. And he'll jump to most of these songs. I didn't go back and count, but it feels like the first 10 seconds are hit it, Luca, and he just rips into something like immediately. Solos, super fast speed metal riffs, like you can hear that part of the German scene is not dead in this, right? So like the early part of German power metal that was still very much rooted in speed and thrash, so to speak, he has his pulse on. It's just when you include this massive sort of key section that's adding orchestral sort of swells and these constant, I don't know, to Jim's point up there, how much of it is a hammer on and how much of it is sweeping, but like it feels exhaustive at times how much he can add to these songs in terms of the density sonically. So we do get a couple of times where there is like a bass solo as well. Mm-hmm. They make room for that. I think the track that I'd be interested, we've all kind of alluded to, which I think is a Dance of Fire and Ice, is that the fifth track, which is clearly this sort of like medieval folk melody, and that once again Christopher Lee makes it joins the party to begin that. And I almost wonder if that started as an interlude and they just decided to flesh it out into a full song. Because it's kind of sits at the middle of this record, and it could have just been like a 1 minute little folky thing, and then they moved on to the next thing. But the fact they decided to make an entire song that's basically acoustic, and in the closing moments, we get a little bit of the metal comes back into it, and that's followed up with the next track, which is once again, Raging Starfire. It's like, hit it, Luca, and like he jumps right back in, kind of deal. So, that feels to me almost like an interlude that became a song. And then the last one, I do think the one with the strongest song that brings the greatest amount of melodrama is the Lost in Cold Dreams. I think the vocal performance on that I totally enjoy that. It may be sort of like the big ballad here, where the majority of it sort of runs through an acoustic guitar and a piano. It's the quieter moment here, but I don't feel it's a failure within this world. Like, I never got it and felt like I need to skip this, or it feels goofy. It 100% makes sense within the context of this genre album. So I actually really enjoyed that track, and every time it arrived, I think in terms of the standout ballad, I will co-sign Jim's oh man, we're going to get an 11+ minute song to close this out. But you have this like narration that begins it. And what's another thing is I actually think the melody on the chorus here doesn't quite give me an exultant feel, which I think this is, once again, I'm expressing my naivete and ignorance, but this is like part of a dark book or Dark Lord or something series of albums that they've kind of put out. And it felt to me like this was like a turning page in a chapter, the way that song starts to end. It doesn't feel like this big exultant climactic end as much as it's like leaves you with a little bit of drama built in. So I think in terms of composition there, like there's a bunch of different things going on. But I'm kind of curious in terms of like the story they're trying to tell with this record and where it's going. There we go. Thank you. Tycho's got me. So I'll pass it on from there.
Yeah, as far as the songwriting and composition goes, you can tell this is Luca and Alex Staropoli, the keyboardist, their main vision here. And we get so used to in metal hearing keyboards as kind of something off in the background, something that is there real simple. You could tell it's maybe the guitar player just hitting a note here and there for the whatever. The fact that there's no understating the fact that the keyboards on this are a huge part of it. Alex's technique is obviously highly trained. He adds so much to these songs, and it's even a lead instrument, how it is trading solos back and forth with Luca. And he's not always just hitting chords. He's doing things to help move the atmosphere in the background around the guitar riffs, which very cool, very, very cool, very stand out. And I listened to this album, and the transitions, sometimes they can be a bit jarring, but nothing ever sounds out of place. Sometimes the transitions are very flamboyant. But again, it adds to the overall composition of the song, the overall dynamic to the song. And really, we get to this track 5, the one we're all ragging on here. The reason why it bothers me so much is because it takes away from the album. It doesn't contribute to the album. The conceptual flow of the way this thing is going, it feels like we're about to hit a climax, and then you hit this song and you just fall off the cliff. And we were listening to it today in the car. My kid, he's like, halfway through, he's like, wow, this song sucks. And I'm like, it doesn't suck. It just isn't in the right spot. And really, if this song was taken, this is the only real conceptual faux pas I see on this record. And it isn't because it's poorly played or poorly executed. everything is in perfect alignment here. It just is not the right feel for the album. If they would have taken the ballad and put that in its place, it would have been a much different. It would have been, because I'm with you, Kellen. I really enjoy the ballad on here. It really lets Fabio. I don't know if tenor. I'm assuming it's tenor. It's not super high. He's not up in the falsetto range or soprano. He's very much very powerful mid-range. Kind of like Pavarotti in a way. So I'm assuming it's a tenor. It's awesome. His tenor is great. Again, I'm naive when it comes to this shit, but there are times where they take the foot off the accelerator and let their singer do what he is so perfectly trained at. And he's got an awesome voice. Like I said, typically really strong vibrato can be a little bit annoying, but in this context, it feels right. Yes. Thanks, Tycho. Tenor. Yes. And really the way the songs are composed, I love the journey they take you on. It starts off feeling like a corner song with these really crazy riffs, really note heavy riffs, and then they drop into like, oh, they're hinting at a ballad. They start to sell you on this emotional thing, and then it changes again. And that kept me interested when, the midway part initially, until I started to become accustomed to the album, my attention started to falter. They would always bring me back in with a cool, interesting twist. And it was all to the service of the song and the album. So yeah, the songwriting on here is fantastic. Fantastic. The musicianship, top notch. No complaints other than the one that we've all been, kind of making light of here. But let's talk about the production. Logan.
You're going to let the dope smoker guy go first.
It's so clean. It feels like, yeah. Yeah.
All right, that's it. Those are my notes.
There it is. Yeah.
No, I mean, honestly, it kind of left with a similar impression. Like when I was typing up my answer to this question, similar to the compositionally, like it's impressive as a whole, but I didn't really feel too connected to any of it. Like I didn't feel like anything was really like jumping out of this mix or making a big impression, besides the guitar and keytar in specific moments. Like. I have to stress that enough that like the guitar absolutely shines production wise at times, not always. I lose it a lot, unfortunately, but when they want it to be like, the lightning bolt to your frontal cortex, that's what it is. And it's amazing. Same with the keytar. And like in those moments, there's a lot of feeling, a lot of intentionality to, how the instrument sounds, and I'm impressed. Like I'm talking, moments like that opening riff to the title track. That's like super cool and mesmerizing. And then like the songs where the keytar kind of takes like a lead guitar point, or even like I'll rag on the ballad in a little bit, but like when the guitar pops in on the ballad, it's the electric guitar. It's amazing. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Thank God, and everything else in the mix kind of doesn't leave me feeling with that much. And I hate to say it, I didn't hear any bass. I'm sure you guys have all been talking about it. It's been there. I failed to listen to this album at a certain point, I guess, and I did not pick up any bass at all. And even the drums, I was just like, everything is just so at the same level in the mix, and it all feels so clinical. And I don't really know how they could, in all fairness, they could make this album without it being like that. I mean, we've got 30 tracks layered, 40 track, who knows how many, but
yeah.
They're all vying for that space. And I think this is kind of the only way to do it that I've kind of heard with an album like this. And so at the end of the day, it's not like a failure for this kind of album. I did miss some shredding action, Tumbles. You're absolutely right. I did pick up on some, but like it was, not. It just didn't grip me like some of those bigger guitar moments where he was like playing like a more simplistic like riff, where you're like, whoa, that's like electrifying. And then like where he's playing like the Dance of the Bumblebee section,
oh yeah, the bonus track. The bonus track.
Yeah. Which I didn't realize was the bonus track until earlier today. So
It shouldn't have been on the album. It
I
shouldn't have been there.
I made that mistake one too many times.
Yeah.
So to be fair, that's on me. But in all fairness, to defend myself, if this were a tech death album doing similar stuff, I would levy the same complaints about the production. Like I don't know how you can make an album so like neoclassically infused and like have all these different layers and not have this like technical and clean or orchestration kind of feel. So I think that for to a certain extent, this complaint is just it's a part of an album like this and not necessarily a ding against it.
All right, Kellen.
Yeah, I actually don't disagree that much with Logan here. In the sense, like, the biggest issue with metal bands trying to sound like an orchestra is that, like, to mirror or create the same impression of a 120 piece concert, like, that requires a whole lot of participants and space and all of that. So to try and shrink that within a power metal listen between a handful of band members, I always end up feeling like it just gets a little bit predictable and lifeless by comparison. The dynamic swing that an orchestra can go through, it's very difficult to mirror that in a studio. And I always end up feeling that's a major detraction when I listen to music like this. I don't have any major complaints. Like, I think probably a similar thing to say about the Lost Horizon record. There's a certain clarity to it, as a certain sort of organization to it. I do think, like, the keyboards, any sort of diverse sort of choices they made in terms of what instrument they wanted to channel through that, it comes through clearly. This record feels full, so there's not like any wasted space. But like, this is a nuclear blast listen in 2010. Mm-hmm. So like, I don't feel like harping on this too much. There's probably other things that you are gravitating towards a band like this from this time period. And most likely a production with tons of individual personality is not one of them.
All right, Jim.
Yeah, so production for me, this almost got to that point where the symphonic elements were kind of, overpowering, the metal elements for me. But it didn't cross that line. It walked right up to it. I mean, I was just about to, there were moments where I'm like, wait, are you burying the guitar too much? Are you burying the drums too much? But it never quite stepped over that line for me. I feel like, when I needed that riff to be powerful, it was powerful. And the lead breaks were always like, completely discernible and understandable. And they're pushed up in the mix like they should have been. And that includes the keyboard solos and the bass solos. Like I heard all of that really easily, and that was great because I wanted to be able to focus in on those moments when they came. And I think that there was a great balance. And, I think a combination would be a better word between like the vocals and the symphonic elements, like especially on Reign of Terror, like kind of at the end where like the choir vocals and the guitars are kind of hitting it together, and then they kind of like do like a straight beat, and it just makes it sound super powerful. And I was like, wow, that's a great way to take that choir vocal, symphonic elements, and that percussive element of the drums and make it just this really cool like headbanging moment. You're headbanging to like the choir vocals and the drums, probably even more so than the guitar right there. Mm-hmm. And that's a great testament to knowing like what to balance and when, in a song that has, or in a band that has this many disparate elements going on, right? To know when to give like focus and spotlight to this instrumentation, because it's going to, really make this piece hit harder here. But in this part of the song, like, maybe we'll push the, the acoustic guitars up and pull back on all the symphonic stuff. So I think that there was definitely some finesse and care in the studio to make sure that all that was pulled off without being distracting in any way, and it didn't seem you know, like it would be so weird that they couldn't, try to pull that off, that sort of playing around with a mix live. It wasn't like so over the top. It just seemed kind of natural in this sense, which sounds kind of weird talking about power metal. We're talking about Dragons and Wizards, and but there's but it did feel that way to me. Like there was just a great care taken to make sure that when something needed to be heard, it was heard, and it was heard clearly, and it sounded good. And so yeah, this was a production that could have been too much for me. It was right on there where the classical instrumentation, whether it's actually performed or electronic or both, whatever the combination is there, could have been too much. But it wasn't. They rode that fine line. They were able to kind of discern where that demarcation point was. Like, here's the metal, here's the classical stuff, and we're going to let them overlap when it makes sense, and we're going to like highlight one or the other when it's appropriate to do so. Yeah, man, I think that that has to be difficult, right? When you've got this varied spectrum to deal with sonic elements, and you find a way to make it work that still is pleasing to like a metal fan's ear, but can hopefully gain some appreciation for people that are really into the performance itself, and the compositional elements. So that balance really works for me. And yeah, even when there's highlights on certain vocals, and we'll talk about later, we talk about favorite songs and stuff like that. It still doesn't detract too much from either the metal or whatever else is going on. So yeah, I short of it is, I'm pleased with it.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same mindset that Jim is on this here. They let you hear everything that needs to be heard when it needs to be heard, and listen. In fact, there was a couple times typically when you have comments about production is because there's something you hate. It takes you out of the musical experience, at least for me, and I did not get that here. I mean, even the choir, they got like 8 or 10 people listed for. They actually have a choir, and there's a hugeness to them. It feels like they're in a hall singing. And for as many moving parts as there are musically going on here, to be able to hear that little attention to detail, it's kind of nice. And the fact that they bring the choir in, it isn't just the choir singing by themselves. No, they're actually worked into the riffs as well. They're part of the the layers in some of these sometimes very ferocious metal songs. So the fact that there's room for all of that to breathe, and yes, they have an actual choir, but the instrumentation is, a lot of it is done on the keyboard. So maybe that gives it a little bit more room, since the sound is kind of coming from one place, although you can still pan that shit. I don't know. The guitars, hard left, hard right. You can hear the dueling riffs, not just the solos, and the riffs too. There's 2 different guitar lines happening in some of these songs, which is really cool. And it isn't just easy riffs. There's like complex shit going on here on both ears. It's like, wow. And the fact you can hear the bass line underneath it, accenting a certain thing here and there, and the keyboards, and Fabio's right in the center. He's got a really warm tone to him. And in fact, there's times I'm like, wow, this is almost produced perfect. How within this budget, how did they get perfect? It doesn't sound cheap. The instrumentation doesn't sound, although, Jim mentioned chip tunes, which I'm not overly familiar with. I know what you're talking about. I never got that feeling. I never got that. The sounds don't sound chintzy. It doesn't sound like a cheap, shitty Casio. It all sounds, relatively warm and right. It sounds like they're not real instruments, but they have the breadth of real instruments. And I don't know. I was impressed. I was impressed with the production. Like I said, a lot of moving parts and layers and ideas to manage, and they do it. And yeah, impressed. Least favorite songs. Kellen.
So I think we've kind of talked about Reign of Terror as being sort of the interesting sort of choice here. I'm happy Jim brought that out. In terms of the choir piece to that, I got a lot of attention. I know for the aggressive vocal style, which is a little bit like of a whiplash moment because it's unexpected. But I think the most entertaining part of that song is potentially the more aggressive riffing on that is married to just like to Logan's point, the township joining in for the song. Like the number of vocalists on that add to this sort of like bombast is standout feature for sure. The other ones that I really enjoyed, I think I'm going to go with the chorus for On the Way to Einor. That comes much later in this record, but I feel like
great song.
By the time you get to I want to join in to this journey by the time we get to that chorus. I feel like that is the most upbeat chorus on this entire record, in terms of like whatever sort of power metal is supposed to be inviting. It comes so late in the listen, I don't think it got a lot of attention, but I really enjoy the chorus on that. I like I previously mentioned, the ballad here, and it's a nice change of pace and kind of an expected song you're going to get from a power metal record. But I think it's executed well. I do think it's also like in terms of the vocal performance here, he's a lot of breathing room on this, and really is like the strongest character on this track. I outside of that, like I will stand with my Song of Fire and Dance sort of should be an interlude, track number 5 here. It definitely feels like a weird little transition moment on the record. But those 3 tracks are the ones that so Reign of Terror, On the Way to Einor, and Lost in Cold Dreams are sort of my favorites on this record.
All right, Logan.
Yeah, so first off, if I look at this album objectively and like the flow and the structure of it, I really have no issue with how it's structured. I shouldn't, I think it's really well paced, and on paper it flows great. Like you've got like a strong 3 opening number, then you've got like the folky like interlude track, and then another like power metal anthem, the ballad, and then you kind of end the album on like a big epic note. Like I think it's like cool that I still figured out how this album is paced, and I'm a fan of that pacing. Like that's neat. Still, it's the first 3 songs for me are the best, and
they're all bangers.
It's like it's somewhat of a blur after that. But I like the opening track, the C of whatever it's called, Sea of Fate, and like not the best song compared to the next 2 that pop up, but it's a very good like opener. Like it shows what the album can do without showing all of the tricks and stuff. And once again, a big fan of the guitar solo in that song that comes in towards the end. That is awesome. The Moonlight track, Crystal Moonlight, almost the favorite song on the album. I as I said, I love the arrangements, the symphonic arrangements on it, and how they pair up with the riffs and kind of guide the song along. And then the chorus, as Jim said, is just perfect. It's in my head right now playing. I mean, Moonlight, it's just, it's infectious. Reign of Terror, absolutely the best song in the album. I mean, we've kind of talked about that one. To me, it succeeds in transporting you into this world. And really this 3-track run, I'm like fully transported into this like kind of epic, gripping, emotionally stirring tale with like, someone's being attacked by a dragon, oh look, there's the dragon right there. Quick, all the innkeepers into your homes that are about to be caught on fire. And that's what Reign of Terror is. And it's very cool to hear all the people like, and then Marty, you mentioned that in the production, right? You can hear like all these different vocals like bouncing off of each other. That is a production note. That's a cool production note right there. That is a part specifically of that song. And the guitar work in that track is amazing. It's dizzying.
Yeah.
It makes me think of a dragon like just dropping out of the sky. It's very cool to hear that song. And once again, the harsh vocals, whoever does them, perfect. Like they're like this almost black metal snarl at times, and yeah, it gives it like a very cinematic and like thespian kind of feel that to me works, as I said, because it puts you in this world. And then yeah, I'm out with the next one, the folk interlude track. The world is gone, and instead I'm in any Ren fair that I could, that is all over the place. I paid $30 to get in, $50 for a turkey leg. That
you're trying to eat a turkey leg, and you start smelling somebody's fart. Yeah, it takes it away.
Yep, there's all these people dressed up around me, and yeah, it's a different atmosphere and vibe. And I'm with Kellen. To me, I just can't get the feeling that it's an interlude song, or like 3 different interlude tracks are just pieced together. Like I can tell there's an actual song kind of in the middle, but it's very long also.
Almost 7 minutes.
It feels very long, and it just kind of drags.
It is. It's long. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the ballad is kind of right after it, and then I have an issue with the ballad. I feel like the ballad is not really that exciting. It's emotionally stirring when that guitar solo happens, but like to get to it, I don't really feel that level of excitement, and it's a kind of a slog. And then when the guitar solo happens, it's I'm perked up and I'm excited, but other than that, it's kind of just fine, unfortunately. And then the rest of the album is kind of a blur. I mean, I will say like the closing title track, the guitar intro once again, and certain guitar parts in this song are amazing, and I always perk up for that. But I'm kind of lost at at when they occur or why they occur, and I would like to have more of a placement of events with all these bigger things that are happening, and I kind of don't with like the majority of the second half of the album.
All right, Jim.
Yeah, man. I very similar to Logan. Sea of Fate. The first real song after the kind of the intro track. Just as I mentioned, just killer hammer on type riff at the beginning. You kind of see everything they're all about, which you should on a great opener, and you do. This is a killer song. Awesome to hear that bass solo like right on the very first track. That was awesome. Reign of Terror, definitely my favorite. I mean, that song is it's just so killer. Everything about that song rules. The riffs, the chorus vocals, the screaming vocals, the solos. Just it has everything that I like about this record. The Ren Fair song, which I'm not going to try to butcher the pronunciation again. Yeah, we know that's lame. I do like Christopher Lee's intro on it, so it's not all bad. But other than that, within the context of power metal, it makes sense. But within the context of this record, I think it just takes you right out of it, and it's unnecessary. Without that, I think it also would have contributed to this being a perfect length of an album. It would have been about 47 minutes. That's great, right? So for a lot of reasons, I think that thing should have been axed or done something, put it on the EP or something, but not here.
Yeah.
On the way to Einor, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that, but that's that lower register vocal that I mentioned earlier. I love that, and even though it was a little disconcerting at first, that you hear that female vocal, that ooh, I was like, man, am I watching a 60s era Star Trek episode? It was like, oh man, what's going on here? But after a few listens, I kind of got with it, and I was fine with it. But it definitely reminded me of Star Trek. I just saw every time the song came on, I imagined the old Enterprise going through my with a radar in the front. But man, got to give some love to the title track, man. I really do love this closer. I love the beginning with the narration, the acoustic guitar, and first couple of minutes. I think that there's a yell about 3 minutes in, Marty, and it's so cool that you're wearing a Fates Warning shirt, because that yell reminded me of Fates Warning. I like that's a kind of a John Arsh-esque kind of a yell there. It really reminded me of Fates Warning. I actually wrote that down, comparing that to that band. So I think that's super cool. And yeah, Kellen, you're talking about how that, I think it was you, Kellen, were talking about the vocal on this song. Wasn't that sort of like kind of bombastic expectation, kind of a closer for a power metal? Like, you're right. Like there's a somberness to this chorus. There's a sadness to it. I mean, which makes sense. He's saying, sad immortal angels, right? But he could have delivered that with a super powerful sad immortal angel. Yeah, but instead, no. He really kind of brings it all home, and in an emotive way, and it really feels like it's from the heart. Like he's taking that fictional story, putting himself in it, and pulling the whole emotion of the record and putting it out right there. So I mean, I think that song, excellent closer, and definitely one of the more kind of there's a feel to that song so I just really want to call that out. And Logan, I agree with you about the ballad, man. Like, I was the same way about the ballad. I'm like, oh, I don't know that. But then the guitar solo comes in. Like that guitar solo is what saves that track for me, right? It was kind of like, competing. It still wasn't as bad as the Ren Fair thing, but I was like, oh, I don't like this, I don't like, and then the guitar came in, and then I was like, oh, there it is. You know what I mean? So I think that song is really saved by the guitar playing on it. So really, all in all, the only throwaway track is Ren Fair for me. The rest of this, though, especially like it's like the bookends, right? Great opener, great closer, but also, and I think Reign of Terror, sort of the steeple in the church. Like it just kind of, it's up there and it's really high. But yeah, man, a lot of different push and pulls here, musically, emotionally through the record, and yeah, man, yeah, overall, man, I do think he did a great job.
All right, yeah, for me, I have to mirror Logan's thoughts on the first three songs. They are fantastic headbangers. I think Crystal Moonlight of that first 3-song run, for me, it's the most traditional power metal sounding song. The guitar work is exciting, but it isn't maybe as frantic. And there's very fantastic synth accompaniment on here. A lot of flair, musical and vocal work in the chorus. It's just a great power metal song. Very memorable chorus. Reign of Terror, absolute standout track on the album. The riff work in this, it's just so full of movement and technical wizardry. It reminds me, like I mentioned, Skeleton on Your Shoulder from Corner. It just has that. And the cool thing about the technicality of this record, it is super complex and fierce and exciting, but they never lose sight of melody. They never lose sight of motion. It isn't like complex. It's not like a math equation. There's a lot of notes being thrown at you, but it's still very musical, which is a nice touch. On this song, on this Reign of Terror song, the choir vocals step up in their importance. They're part of the track here. Very cool. And yet, of course, the offsetting, harsh, black metal-esque vocals up against Fabio's very smooth and powerful sound is a very nice touch. Could have lived in some of the other songs on here too. I liked it. It was a good contrast. And least favorite, we're gonna get to the Ren Fair. And I think that song fails makes you guys maybe a little more weary of the ballad when it hits, because you just sat through almost 7 minutes of wandering. I mean, yeah, there's some obviously great musicality going on in the Ren Fair song. It's just a complete different feel from the rest of the album. Whereas when the ballad hits, it kind of hints at that sound, that style, but they do it in a very traditional power metal type of way. And a lot of, I've come to to realize as I've gotten older and started to fully embrace this whole power metal thing, that a good ballad on an album is actually a good thing. It can be done well. And what I really focused on this song was Fabio. He was built for this style. He just really lets him stretch out and really push his voice. Good stuff. Before that, the Raging Starfire. This is one. It comes directly after that medieval thing, and it rips. It's an absolute ripping power metal double bass. It's energetic. There's like this exploding cluster of guitar notes. It's almost like the music is trying to emulate the song title, or Raging Starfire. That's what it initially feels like sparks from a star, like hitting your ship as you're flying through it. Very cool. I dig it. The ballad, we did that. On the Way to Ainur this is kind of like the mock ending. This song almost feels like it should have been the ending song. It kind of starts off with a headbanging fury to it, driving double bass. This is the song where there's like these offsetting note-oriented speed metal riffing in each speaker. It's like, wow, awesome. And then they kind of slide into this ballad break, which is kind of throws you off. It's like, this isn't where I expected this to go, but they sell you on it. There's an emotion there. They're like, okay, I'm here. But then they explode right away back into this emotive guitar work and equally passionate vocal lines. It's just genius. And the band is genius in keeping their songs always engaging and complex. But I talked about the breaks and the transitions. They feel flawless in this song, even though they are a little jarring at times. But yeah, this here feels like the ending. And then you get to the title track, 11 minutes long. And I was thinking, okay, this is going to be an epic, triumphant closer. But there's like orchestration up front, and it kind of makes it feel like this is going to be more of a journey than a triumphant victory, closing with a bang. It almost feels criminal that they end this CD. It's even on the CD. The 2 bonus tracks are on the CD as well. They shouldn't have been here, because this song, it kind of puts a really nice bow on this record. I found that it's more mid-paced. It's just more of a kind of a march to it. And Fabio, he locks in with the backing synth line more so than the guitar. So he is even more emotive throughout the period of the verses and stuff. He really pours his soul into every word on this, and you can feel it. He transfers the emotion to you very, very effectively. Yeah. And I'm very glad they went out on more of an emotive statement than a flash and bang. They did all that leading up to it. So they kind of changed the narrative a bit here, and they close with more of a bit of melancholy. And they did it by not being super technical. They completely left what happened before, and they focused on a different feeling. So that should have been the ending. Then we get that silly Labyrinth of Madness guitar solo, and the Sea of Fate orchestration version. Good vocal performance by Fabio, but the album should have ended without the bonus tracks. But yeah, I've only got one song I'm complaining about. It's technically a good song, but it doesn't fit on the album. The rest of the album I think is fantastic. And the more I've spun it, the more I've kind of fallen in love with it. And it kind of makes me, a lot of people I think I'll get there. We'll talk about that last. Let's talk about Judgment final thoughts. Jim.
Yeah, this was one of those weird moments where, I kind of feel like tonight, as we've talked about the record, or specifically as I've talked about it, like I realized that this record had a larger impact on me than I first realized. Because as I kept talking about it, I'm like, hey man, I really like that moment, or I really like that, or that stuck with me, or I kind of felt the emotion there. And I'm like, it's almost like I'm kind of, revisiting and outlining my experience over the past week, and then realizing that it kind of hit me, and I didn't expect it to. I didn't expect to not like it. Over the last few years, as we've been doing the show, Marty's slowly but surely brought me more into the power metal fold and stuff like that. And I've always loved the old gods, Halloween and Blind Guardian and stuff, but the newer stuff, right? But realizing that there's definitely some like emotional takes from the vocal performances and the layering of the choir vocals and stuff, with the percussion, as I mentioned earlier, all those things having a real impact, uh, have kind of raised, my opinion of this. So, yeah, it's nice to, go down a path and end up in a place where you didn't think you were going to end up. Right. I didn't think that I was going to hate this, but I think I ended up liking it a lot more than I realized. So, yeah, my take is like, am I going to rush on by this? No, there's a lot of things that are much higher on my list that I want to add to my collection. But I'd be hard pressed to say no if I run across this in the racks, man. Because it's had some staying power with me, and like there's almost like a little bit of sadness thinking like, oh, I guess I'm gonna listen to this anymore. I'm like, yeah, fuck that, I want to listen to this some more.
Yeah.
So that's testament to these guys, man. Like I said, it was interesting as the discussion itself has like brought out from me, a more in-depth experience of the record than I realized. Right. And that's another cool thing about, what we do is we're not only analyzing the music, but we're kind of, indirectly analyzing ourselves. Right. And opening up new avenues of experience. So, yeah, that's my take.
All right, Logan.
Yeah, I mean, this was a interesting, cool week, and kind of similar to Jim. I was expecting to go into actually potentially really liking this album, just because that seems to be the trend as we introduce power metal, on this album club. Is you're right, it's very good metal music and it should be appreciated, and I'm wrong. That's the kind of thing.
Oh, there's no right.
I'm ready to eat crow. Well, I'm owning up to that, like, yeah, this is good.
We'll bust your balls. That's what we do here.
I would get this and stuff. But I'm saying not tonight. I am confirmed that I can sometimes still have issues with power metal and certain styles of power metal, apparently. And the symphonic stuff is still like I probably approached it all wrong. I can, as also what Jim was saying, like, you learn a little bit about yourself and how you're approaching albums like this. And it could be the listening style that I approached it with versus maybe just having a more dedicated and like focused time, sitting with the lyrics, even like that, like hearing you guys talk about it, hearing other people in like the Discord, like Tumbles, who's very active in the chat tonight. Cheers to Tumbles and Tycho as well. Hearing them discuss it, and Tumbles was talking on the Discord that this is one of those albums that you kind of immerse yourself in the story. You read the lyrics, you get into it. You know what the narrators are saying and whatever what's happening here. And God, I was nowhere near close to that being what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what anything was happening, why we were doing anything, why the choirs were there, why the opera vocalist was there, why even Christopher Lee was there. Got nothing. I can, maybe that set me up for having this kind of feeling with it. Like I was absolutely there for the first 3 tracks, and then honestly maybe even the folk metal Ren Fair thing torpedoed it for me, and I was just not able to recover after that. I'm not sure, but all I know is the zoning out and the feeling like I wasn't connecting with it and it was leaving me cold, and this is just not my kind of thing, ended up how I kind of felt about this experience, and it's a dizzying, impressive, and amazing album instrumentally and compositionally, but might not be for me right now. I do not know if I'll end up revisiting this right now, but I could see myself picking up an album from this band if I saw it in the used bin. But just because I don't mind challenging myself musically, and
gotta be better than Elden Bridge.
I absolutely will. I think it probably is.
Yeah.
And I'll keep to this for now, but maybe in the near future I can find another Rhapsody album. To kind of give a rating to it, it's probably like a 6.5 out of 10 for me right now. It's just not quite connecting.
All right, Colin, I'll let you have last word. Your pick. Yeah, this is a great record, and I always just kind of thought I've got a bunch of their shit, and I always thought, oh, they're early albums, the ones with the dragons on it. Those were superior. They're just better albums, but reconnecting with this thing again, giving it the attention it deserves. I'm pretty impressed. This is a 9 out of 10 record for me, and it's just that stupid Ren Fair song. If that wasn't there, this would have been damn near perfect. I love Fabio's voice. He's really, he doesn't have the bombastic shine of a Kiska or a Jeff Tate maybe, but he is a really good singer. I mean, like theater, opera type of singer, and that to me is. It has a little bit more of a real feeling, I guess. I don't know. And the way he sits within this music is perfect. It really is. And the fact that it's still very symphonic and bombastic, there's all elements of speed metal that come into this stuff here too. There's some edge and grit to some of this shit. And it's impressive. And the fact that they are so on the outside looking in, they're very slick, very composed, but you listen to those riffs, they're sick. The riffs are sick. There's some shredding to it, but the riffs alone are impressive. And there's a lot of great things all coming to a head on this album. And I need to really revisit my Rhapsody collection and see what I'm missing and maybe refamiliarize myself with some of the past records. They don't get a lot of replays for some reason. It's not because I don't like it. I'm always side on the German side, I guess. But yeah, that's it. It's a 9 out of 10 album for me. Kellen, your thoughts?
Well, this turned out better than I thought it would. Yeah. For me, like, I don't necessarily jump into this too often. I think, like, as I spend more time in this world, I'll probably venture outside and grab a different symphonic power metal album next time. If you have a recommendation, put it in the chat. Or you see this at the end in the comments, you want to have another one that you think I should pick up and add to my collection. I'd be interested to get anyone who's tuned into this album club and has thoughts.
Dude, you'd be surprised. There's some great Strata. My kids into them. They fucking rip. They're good. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Anyway, but yeah, like I just I was happy to, like, this one, I think, like, kind of caught me off guard in the sense that I predicted, like, crazy talented sort of guitar playing and sort of operatic vocals and big orchestration. But I never really, like, as outside of the sort of medieval Ren Fair thing that happens in the middle of this, like, I still think there's some interesting songwriting here and some novel elements that were probably less predictable. I guess you, like, when you get past the first sort of, Halloweens and Blind Guardians of the world, I think too often I'm definitely guilty of this. This is a world that, in some ways, deservedly so, ends up being kind of cliche, and I don't spend any time sort of actually investigating. So, to all the good people who continue to sort of push me and encourage me to try something new, who tune in and watch this channel or are part of our panel this evening. So, thank you for everyone who kind of contributes to this show and opens new doors for all of us, I guess.
Right on. Whose turn to pick? All right. What you got, Jimsis?
So, Jimsis has a conundrum. I have two albums 30 years apart. One is 2022, one's 1992. So I'm like, I really want both of them. So so what am I going, guys? Am I going 30 years ago or am I going 30 years up? What do you think? Maybe
whatever you want.
In the chat.
20,
All right, hey guys in the chat right now, tell me, you want 2022 or 1992? Go ahead, post something now, and the first post, I'm going to go with it.
They're all going to say 92.
Lee is saying black metal. You know what? All right, Lee, I got you.
Oh no, he's pulling the audio.
Oh,
incredible. What the hell is happening right now?
The invisible third option.
Dave RR just said 2022.
I think 2022 wins it, Jim. Go with that one.
Oh.
Okay.
You guys ever heard this album by Mayhem?
No, man, we're gonna go with
Oh no.
Nimbifer, demos 1 and 2.
Oh. Demo compilation.
Demo.
Okay.
All right, Nimbifer demos 1 and 2. Is that a made up word? What the hell is Nimbifer?
Good stuff.
All right, Nimbifer demos 1 and 2. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Do we have any stuff going on that you guys want to promote in your activities, Logan?
Trying to find Nimbifer first off. Where the hell do I find
Is that even going to be? We'll even be able to find that?
Jim,
Yeah,
can
it
you
should
rip
be
me a
out
copy?
there. I might have a. Let me see if I got one of their later ones. It's easier to find.
Here, I'll figure it. I'll figure it out. The Seb Ethereum Hour thing was awesome on Saturday. We did announce that there's another one coming up on August 22nd. We're talking about 1996. It's going to be the first of a trilogy of streams. Rick's a mastermind when it comes to this stuff. We're going to go through the 3 sixes of decades. So 96, 06, 2016. So 96, and it's going to be with Brian Arkham. So that'll be August 22nd, a Saturday. Looking forward to that for sure.
All right. Kellen will be moving. Congratulations, brother. Jim, what you got going on? Anything?
No. I feel bad. I'm causing consternation in the chat. I will get your 1992 next time, James.
All right. As far as the show Metallurgy goes, we're going to be Alan. No guest on Friday. Alan and I are going to be talking the behind the scenes of the channel. Obviously, there's been some changes to YouTube, and with ads popping up during the stream, people are annoyed. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what goes into the channel, some of the costs of it, all that fun stuff. Be a little bit transparent, I suppose. And then we'll slide into a What's Spinning episode. So that's happening on Friday. Saturday, I will be doing another radio metallurgy show, I believe. I have not started programming for it yet. So that's going to be happening. And there's a review coming too. Alan submitted it, and I totally spaced editing it this week. So that's going to be popping up sometime soon. Yeah, and there's some other stuff with the radio metallurgy stuff that's going to be coming down the pike. I know TJ has been struggling with tech issues. He's going to be doing some show. He's got like 4 shows already programmed. And yeah, some other stuff going. We'll announce that as it happens. But yeah, everybody, if you want to hear those radio shows, you need to join the Discord server. Link in the description. And yeah. Yes, Tim, Nimbifer Demo 1 and 2. We'll be doing demos this time. So it'll be something a little bit different. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Thank you, Lee, for the super chat, and everybody else for attending and sharing your thoughts on this Rhapsody of Fire album. It was a fun episode. As always, you rule. See you Friday. Cheers.